This is a podcast about one woman's mission to help entrepreneurs and business owners write better business books. Each week, we tackle your writing excuses, because there are excuses too, and help you beat the blank page of doom so that you can write the book that'll grow your life and your business. Now here's your host, Vicky Fraser.
Hello and welcome to the 1000 Authors Show. I'm Vicky Quinn Fraser, and today I am grinning from ear to ear because I am interviewing one of my best mates, Yinka Ewuola. And I'm so excited because we are talking about something that is extremely passionate to both of us. And Yinka works with women in business, and I obviously work a lot with women in business. They are my raison d'etre, and we both have so much sadness and frustration when we see women not charging enough for their services and really struggling. So that's what we are talking about today. I brought Yinka in because she knows, she's done a lot of work on money mindset. And I'm just going to leave it there, leave the introduction there, except to say that we had a lot of fun recording this, and I think you're going to have a lot of fun listening to it. So enjoy. Yinka, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast. Finally, I can't believe it's taken us this long to do this again. So
I know, but it's awesome to be here. Thank you so much for having me. And I'm really excited about what we're talking about today.
Yay! And before we do that, we're like starting this podcast like we haven't just been nattering for 10 minutes. And before we start though, because I do this with all of my guests, what are you reading at the moment and are you enjoying it?
Yes, and to be honest, you know that I read like 7 books at a go. So I, on Audible or any other place where non-branded that you can get your audiobooks, I'm listening to Mastering Fear, which I'm really enjoying because I spent so much of my life being a scaredy cat, and like feeling the fear and doing it anyway is an awesome book title, just never really vibed with my life. So Mastering Fear is working for me loads better. On the business side, I'm reading Cashvertising. Again, love that book. I started Why Beautiful People Have More Daughters and really enjoying that. But the one that I think I'm thinking about and kind of digging in deeper to is Stephen Bartlett's book, which is Happy, Sexy Millionaire. And that is, it's a fun story. But again, because I'm reading so many books at one go, I'm not really getting like particularly far in any of them, but I would recommend them all for what I've read so far.
Cool. You've talked about Stephen Bartlett's book before, and so I need to get it and read it because I haven't got it yet. So I'm gonna grab a copy. But okay, so we are now. Oh my goodness! So Yinka and I, over the last few weeks, have been shrieking at each other, is the only way I can put it, about pricing, women in business and pricing. I'm just yeah. What is the problem? What is one of the problems?
Okay, so obviously, in That's What She Said, I was the person talking about money mindset. And the reason why, I've spent a lot of time working on my money mindset, but I keep coming across women who offer the most incredible things for the most ridiculous prices. And I've had enough. I've had enough. But also I want to hug, stroke, shake them because they can't see by trying to do a service to one group of people, they're doing a disservice to themselves and everyone else. And so I kind of wanted to have a conversation, stroke, just elucidate, set the record. I want to hug them, but I also want to shake them because they're really screwing themselves and other people, and it needs to stop.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm just going to add to that what we're talking about and what we get kind of sad and frustrated about, or what I get sad and frustrated about, is not people charging low prices for stuff if that's what they want to do and that's what they can afford to do. It's the people who are charging low prices because they feel like they have to, or they don't feel like they're worth it, and are then suffering and working such long hours to try and make ends meet because of those low prices. And that's what we're talking about. It's not the choice part of it's not the people who are choosing, that's fine. It's the people who feel like they're trapped in the low prices that.
Yeah, and what I would add to that is to say that obviously low pricing or free offers is part of a bigger strategy, There isn't a person out there who is successful in business who gives nothing away for free. Every time you open your mouth and are not being paid, that's free content, that's free offers. So it isn't that part either. But equally, it's also, the women, you talked about choice, and the choice part is important, but it's the kind of choice, for example, and, I hope you don't have lots of people in the beehive here, because it's something I'm always so reluctant to say, because Beyonce's fans are militant about their love for Queen Bee. But as I said, the kind of choice, for example, that I don't always perceive as a full choice is, Beyonce, empowered, independent woman running around in her underpants, because that's her choice. Of course, that's her choice. But that's her choice in the context of growing up in the patriarchy and being told over and over again what sexy, independent women wear as part of their costumes. And so while I'm not saying it isn't her choice, I'm saying how much of that is your actual choice because of how you've been raised and what shaped you. And so a lot of these women, they absolutely are choosing their price points. It's not like they are, they're not in multi-level marketing businesses, for example, where there is a set price point. They are choosing their own prices. But the question is why they are making these choices that's causing their own suffering. And some of that's money mindset. Some of that is, there are loads of different factors that go into that. But I even want to challenge the idea of choice, because we're not raised in a vacuum, and what we're taught about money and our own self-worth and what wealthy people are like, is drummed into us from an early age. And that ultimately impacts our choices that seem free, but I'm questioning how free they really are.
Yeah, I mean, how much free choice do any of us really have? And it's
women running around in their underpants. But I love you, Queen Bee, and Beehive, please don't come and get me. Like I genuinely, I'm not afraid of many things, but I'm scared of the Beehive.
I mean, it is a good point that you raised there, and I'm going to slightly tangent from that, because I'm a champion of all women's work everywhere, and that includes sex workers because it's legitimate work. But at the same time, I will say, how many little girls grow up thinking, I want to be a hooker, I want to be a prostitute? They do what they need to do to put the damn food on the table. And yes, maybe there are, we've all heard about, what was her name? Belle de Jour. She made a whole career out of it, and she claimed to love it. And I'm not for a second saying that she didn't love it, but there's that whole wider context of choice and the choices that we make within the framework that's there. And so, yeah, I think that's a really interesting point.
Agreed. We might have to do another podcast on that another day.
I think we should talk about this. Yeah. But back to money mindset. Yeah, talk a little bit about money mindset, Yinka. Tell us a bit about that.
Well, money is one of our oldest relationships. It's a relationship that predates our arrival on Earth. When your parents found out that you were coming, indeed, if there were two of them having a conversation at all about it, but the one parent that was definitely there, it was crossing their minds. Raising children is expensive. So, the messages and the conversation around money, it surrounds us all. And, it goes back, it's cultural, from the country you're born in, from the country you hail from. It's like that one universal, food, money, sunshine. There are a few things in the water that are universally, impact us all. And so the challenge is that if you have a situation, women, it's not that many generations ago that women were considered the property of the men in their lives. You're born your father's daughter or your mother's daughter, then you are your husband's wife, and then you're your son's mother. And so we've always, and that wasn't, that wasn't like 15 that was literally, my parents and grandparents' generations. Mm-hmm. So money as a tool, as a resource, as this amazing thing that can facilitate so much, is very kind of new in terms of women's interaction and management of it. It's not, we don't have thousands of years in the same way. And don't get me wrong, obviously you had ancient Egyptian female pharaohs, and there is certainly historical opportunities of what I'm talking about that is completely in contrast. But in the main, and in terms of cultural messages, a lot of bad messages have been given to women. Women are even the idea, for example, of marriage, and again, that's probably a different podcast altogether, but the whole kind of trading your beauty and your body, to, a dusty old dude because he has money and you can come under his protection. These are messages that were not, distant, removed, and cuts across every culture. Yeah. So women, the messages that we have had around money for such a long time has just left a situation for so many where there are self-worth issues that then drip into, how you price your business, this idea of the kinds of people that are wealthy, the whole kind of shady negativity around wealth building. And, the thing that is additionally layered for women is this idea of being a good girl or a good woman. And those that raise their head above the parapet get it smashed big time. And so for a lot of women, and, money is a very kind of hot button topic and something that women, often struggle with without even realizing, because of these, social messages and like conditioning that kind of goes through, across every culture and across the ages.
Yeah, there's so much to unpack in there, and I'm going to start with one in a sec. But first, I think we ought to trademark the term "dusty old dude" because
no worries, that is the best of all statements. Yes, but it's even. I mean, we're in 2021, and I apologize because obviously that dates this podcast. But
no, that's cool.
Even the tiniest things like, that child marriage in the United States of America, in so many states, is not illegal in the way that you would think. Like girls are being married, like 13, 14-year-old girls are being married to older men. And I watched this documentary and my brain was like, and I'm like, they have the audacity to be going around the world as if they have the moral authority in other countries when this is going on in their own borders. And so, the protection of girls and women, and again, kind of linking back into that whole, money brings protection, money brings security. And as a result of that, what happens, in the melee of society is really problematic.
It is. And it's really telling as well that it's just happened, but also that it's taken this long to happen, that financial abuse has only just been recognised as a part of domestic abuse in UK law as well. And it's like, how has it taken this? Well, I know how it's taken this long. It's a rhetorical question, but, it's taken this long to realise that if you give women financial independence or financial freedom, that is literal freedom. It's the freedom to escape from situations that they are otherwise stuck in. And so, yeah, let's talk a little bit about the guilt because all of this is tied together. It's like, how do we help women build wealth? How do we help women build wealth for themselves? And, not just women, but also basically non-straight white men. How do we help people build wealth? And why, particularly for women, do you think that there is so much guilt around, not for all women, but we feel guilt about charging for what we do and charging for what we put out there? Why do you think that is?
Some of it is what I like to call BS Bible, which is people taking, biblical references and just making them rubbish. So, the age-old saying of the love of money is the root of all evil, which isn't even the verse. Sorry, let me rephrase that. The money is the root of all evil. And actually the verse is the love of money is the root of all evil. But, someone picked that up, ran with it, but they should be the PR people for the good causes in the world, because the level to which that has seeped into people's minds of money being the root of all evil. No one wants to be evil. No one what happened to evil women back in the day? They were, stoned or burnt at the stake or drowned with stones to prove they weren't witches. And then when they were drowned and then they realized that they weren't witches, they were already dead. So, the society that we live in, whatever penalties existed for kind of contravention for the norm, was doubled and in societies and spaces where women didn't have the voices that they have now, that penalty was even higher. So the whole idea of building wealth, of inviting this thing into your life that is believed to be evil or is believed to change you, or and running the risk of being, you know, shunned from the tribe for the one that you know had most stuff, you know, is a double penalty for women. You know, how would she be perceived in her home? How would she be perceived amongst her peers? And so all of that kind of then melees and meshes into this whole, okay, better stay safe, better play it small. And so the minute that you realize that you're trying to contort and shrink yourself into spaces that don't fit from a business or from a wealth perspective, you literally are fighting years and years of indoctrination that tells you there's something wrong with you if you're a woman who wants to create wealth or own wealth or have that financial freedom. And again, you know, that in times past was a legitimate threat to life. And so all of a sudden, you know, it's hard in the work that I've been doing and kind of learning more about how the brain works and stuff. If you can imagine any habit that you have is like a neural pathway, like drawing a line on a piece of paper. You reinforce that line for thousands and thousands of years. Then trying to then draw a different line is like, first of all, you've borne a hole through the paper, through the table, through the floor, and then starting to, you know, draw a new line. It's almost, you know, trying to break bad habits of thousands of years is definitely not going to be something that's going to be done in one or two. No. And so women every day and you know, in trying to build wealth, in trying to charge fairly, in trying to even de-link the idea of your financial worth and your actual human self-worth is trying to undo like hundreds, if not thousands of time of bad programming.
Oh, and we're going to come back to that idea of charge your worth in a minute as well, because that's one of those pieces of advice that, just makes me do that. But before we do that, you were talking about gender roles and that money is the root of all evil. And I think women do feel it more than men for all the reasons that you've said, that, you know, we're traditionally, you know, we're supposed to be nice, we're supposed to be good girls. But how much do you think has also got to do with the traditional gender roles as well? The idea that men are the breadwinners and you know, wear the trousers, whatever that means, and that women are the nurturers. And so they, you know, and all that changed really suddenly during the Second World War, because the men went off to war and died. And so, you know, that's what it changed really suddenly. Do you think that's got a lot to do with it as well?
Absolutely. And the thing I would say, and what makes me laugh is, for example, my history, I'm Nigerian. So our history of kind of female working like outside of the home goes back centuries. You know, my great-grandparent, you know, hailing from a rural black background, you know, women obviously would care for the children, care for the home, but they were also the ones that you go to any market in pretty much any, you know, country in Africa, and it's filled with women. So yes, women are you know, they are the engines of commerce. And so it is really interesting because we were often talking about the difference between, you know, Western and non-Western feminism. Western feminism, definitely, but the way that it works for us in Africa is it's different, and there are other issues at play there as well. But this switch of kind of breadwinner or kind of men go out and work and all of that, no, that, you know, African women have been working and running the business and they've been doing it all forever and a day. And so even that concept and kind of that challenge is definitely more of a Western challenge. There are other challenges that we have, you know, as daughters of Africa, but actually it's that isn't one of them. And that paradigm for Western women is definitely something that's new and therefore has that additional overlay.
Cool. That was really interesting. We'll dig into that a bit more at some point in the future as well, I think.
Backing up future podcasts.
I know. It's just too much to talk about. But as soon as you said that, I was like, I've spent some time in Egypt. I haven't been much further south than Egypt. But the markets were full. All of the markets were run by women. There were, well, not all of them, but, you know, most of the people there that I saw in markets doing the work, getting stuff done, they were the women.
Absolutely.
Interesting.
And you know, it's, you know, on the food side, like you know, textiles, there are a few industries that don't have really prominent women historically, you know, for you know, many hundreds of years. And so the way in which that works is slightly different. And like I said, it's not like the patriarchy doesn't exist across the world, but the manifestation of it, and you know, some of what, for example, you know, when you look at wealthy women who hail from Africa, for example, that story is actually quite a different story, and the way that it works is different. What came to set back their journey was, you know, the Christian pilgrims coming to save them from their silly selves. So, they were definitely more advanced on that front.
Which just makes the whole idea of like Western civilization even more frustrating. It's just like, oh my goodness. Anyway, that's an entirely different episode as well.
Not today.
Not today, Satan. But yeah, so okay, let's talk a little bit about this. Let's talk a little bit about this idea of charging what you're worth, which I see bandied around in the online space all the time, and it makes me crazy because your worth, like you said, it can't be tied to how much you charge. So let's unpack that a little bit.
Okay, so I mean, in fairness to marketing, we need things that are catchy and people will remember, and so I'm not going to completely throw it out in the bin, but I will say that what you're worth is irrelevant to what you charge, in that what you should be charging for is the transformation you bring and the value that you offer. And that isn't about worth. And so, you know, as someone who is I try to be very specific in my language. So it isn't for me talking about charging what you're worth. It's charging what you, the change you bring and the transformation you make. But yes, I do. It's funny because while, as I said, I try to be specific in my language, the fact is that we do solely and wholly tie so much of our worth to the money that we earn. And you see it when you go to dinner parties and people ask, what do you do? And what they really want to ask is, how much are you paid? And so when, you know, when you say, oh, I work here, and I was an investment banker. So I would say I work for, XYZ bank. There's no point in me telling you my job. You wouldn't understand it. I barely understand it. So it is what it is. But you could see their eyes like light up, and they're like, oh, she's someone worth talking to because she works at this bank. So she's clearly someone who, A, is wealthy, or B, is smart, or whatever it is. But in that earns money worthy of me talking to. And it's so interesting because obviously I'm, so many years away from that career now. It's still very much part of my history. But I've seen people, when I say what I do now, people are like, and I'm like, yeah, my husband calls it the Goldman swag. Oh gosh, I've just named the bank now as well. So, but yeah, yeah, you can find it on LinkedIn anyway. But yeah, the swag we link. If someone, you meet someone at a dinner party, oh, what are you? Oh, I sweep the road. You'd be like, oh, okay, and I'm like, really? Like, you don't know anything about that guy. Oh, and I assume it's a guy from my conversation, could be a woman. But the fact is that, you don't know, is he a good person? What he does for his community? Like, this link of what you do to pay your bills. And the thing is, at the other end of the spectrum, what do you do? There are many wealthy people that do nothing in terms of what they do to pay their bills. Yeah. And I'm like, okay, that's really fascinating. Yeah. But this indelible tie that we continue to make between what you do or in order to pay your bill and the value you are as a person, it has to be broken because it is literally killing people.
It is. And it's like, and this, again, there's like so many more topics to talk about, but thinking about that, the road sweeper and the cleaners and the people who do the things that literally keep society running are paid, and I know bin people who collect the bins are paid very decently, but I also know that a lot of cleaners are not paid so decently. And it's like, how do, hospitals, how are they going to literally keep people alive? And so, yeah, we have to separate this idea of worth and money.
I'm one of the favorite Yoruba sayings is, well, I'm sure I don't know if it translates it, but essentially cleanliness is next to godliness. So, while our parents, and I'm not going to put my parents on blast, but they would die if I said, oh, I really want to grow up to be a cleaner. They would literally die. Nigerian kid options, doctor, lawyer, disgrace to your family. The disgrace to your family cleaner is definitely in the disgrace to your family. But cleaning is what keeps us alive. And everything that we've learned from a global pandemic tells us just how important it is, just how valuable it is. And therefore, our whole perception of value, our construct of value has to change.
Yeah.
And in supporting women, around kind of self-awareness, self-worth, self-value, that kind of thing, it's we have to stop looking at all these external factors, because there is an intrinsic value in us, and it's because we don't spend any time exploring or focusing on that we don't know it, we don't recognize it, and we don't respect it. And ultimately, there, in understanding and being full of that value, yes, she's so full of herself, is something I've heard plenty of times.
What else am I going to be full of? What?
I always respond, am I supposed to be full of anything else? But therein lies the point, because once you are clear on your own intrinsic value, then you charge what you charge the nature of the transformation you bring. It isn't about what you're worth. It's about the difference you make. And that is contextual, and it's different for different people, and it's different in different contexts. So, providing that service to an individual or to a small business or to a large corporation, different price point. You're still the same person. It's about the value you bring, rather than this, amorphous idea of, oh, I'm worth X, so I'll charge Y. No.
Oh my gosh, yes. Louder for the people at the back. And while we're on this subject of kind of self-worth and stuff like that, this is kind of a slight tangent, but there's this idea that talking about money is vulgar. So things you don't talk about at the dinner table: religion, politics, money. 3 things that I think should be talked about at the dinner table more often, because the world would become a better place, but particularly money. And I have this theory about why that is with money. Because if we don't know how much the men in the room, the white men in the room, are earning, then how are we supposed to try and raise the standards for women? And I just think it's one of those, just keep quiet about it, nobody will know, and that way lies, the equity gap between everybody.
Yeah, and I actually agree really strongly with that. I'll never forget, one of the first things I learned when I started my investment banking job is you don't talk about how much you earn. And I was like, but why, if we're all earning the same? And then I thought, clearly we're not all earning the same, and that's why we don't talk about it. But yeah, secrecy allows inequality to pervade. And to that I say light is the best disinfectant. And I honestly think that it's really important to have those spaces where, certainly not, and again, talking about money in and of itself definitely needs discussion, because your children need to understand it before they get into a space where they actually need to use it. And so, talking about money in all of the different areas, in wealth creation, wealth investment, wealth, debt, leverage, the difference between the two, but also money and emotions is so important. I'll never forget conversations that we've had around, what do you buy when you're sad? It's that as a question, when we talk about, and this is where, this links into other parts of your life, and how, you often find people, buying, sweet treats when they're sad, or they celebrate with food. And I'm like, don't use food as a, don't eat your feelings, B, food isn't your boyfriend, and C, it's really important that you understand how you treat money. But again, money is a relation. We have a relationship with money. And so when we're thinking about boundaries and we're thinking about healthy relationships, you can think about that in terms of human partners, but you can also think about that in terms of intangibles as well. And money, your relationship with money and your relationship with food tell you a whole lot about what you think about your self-worth and how you perceive yourself. And so I absolutely think money absolutely should be spoken about, not only at the dining table, but also in places where you're trying to create and make things fairer. And so it is, it's not lost on me that it isn't done that way. And it's really obvious why it isn't.
Yeah. As soon as you start, this is it. It's the shining a light thing. As soon as you start actually looking at this stuff, it does become obvious. And you're like, how did people not see this before? So more shining a light into dark places would be a wonderful thing, in all areas, which is why I think there's been such an, again, slightly off topic, but why there's been such a massive backlash against more recently the Me Too movement, male violence against women, and last summer Black Lives Matter. It's like we're shining a light on stuff that needs to be looked at. It's like it's not placing blame, it's looking at it, so how can we make the world better? And that just makes people really uncomfortable, as it should.
Yeah, and you know, discomfort is no bad thing. You know, growth is uncomfortable, change is uncomfortable, crushing something and rebuilding something is uncomfortable. You know, even, you know, pruning is uncomfortable. It's all uncomfortable. The challenge is that we love comfort, and we love comforts to our own detriment. I think it's Aubrey Marcus in his book Own the Day, Own Your Life. He talks about how, you know, we get rid of everything hard and so we become soft. And I think that particularly around issues of money, because, you know, when we look at the like financial structures designed to, you know, create learned helplessness, but then B, you know, not empower people to be able to actually have that social mobility. Financial empowerment and independence is activism. It's the one way that you are able to call, you know, some really serious shots. Yeah.
And all of this is so important. So how do we help, particularly women, but, you know, also other men and other people as well, but how do we help them start to build this comfort not even comfort, but this confidence around pricing and charging more and building up? Because I also think a lot of people have to do it in stages, because like you say, discomfort has to come in stages, because otherwise you just hide.
Yes. And that's the thing. It does come in stages. And so I'll describe my journey as opposed to what we can do for everyone, because everybody's different. And some people might listen to what I'm about to say and say, what's she talking about? So what I will say is that the first thing I did was, everything for me started in one of two places. A was self-awareness and B was emotional management. So I think that they are the difference that makes a difference across the board. Because if you have an understanding of yourself, and that's not the whitewashed version, the pleasant version, you know, if you take a look and you see both light and dark and you learn not to judge either, but to accept both, then I legitimately think that what that gives you is a platform where the world is your oyster and you can kind of leap off into any other thing. So I did that through practice. So you'll know, so and again, something I support women with now is I did and continue to do reflection journaling on, you know, really kind of deep, intrinsic questions that make me cry sometimes, not gonna lie, you know, for all the glamour and stuff. It's digging in that deep can be painful, can be very searching, can be uncomfortable, but I've learned to sit with that discomfort and give it a new meaning. I used to run away from it. There'll be months where I'll be like, oh, I just want to do like this really light version of and then I'll be like, no, I'm doing myself. There's no one else I can cheat in my life except me. And so if I'm going to, why cheat myself? So I started with that self-reflection journaling. That has been, you know, I'm like 4.5 years into my practice in that. And that laid the bedrock for everything else. What I then did was really to start thinking about
I'm just going to jump in just really quickly before you do the next thing, because I just wanted to say that I've been doing Yinka's self-reflection journaling, and it is transformational. I'm only on week 2, and it's like, yeah, I've cried so many times, and I'm sure you're not surprised to hear that because I cry all the time. But yeah, it's
don't let the mascara fool you. I do too.
Honestly, I think the two of us could fill an entire lake with our tears. But yeah, so I've been doing this self-reflection journaling, and I've been on a self-awareness journey for a few years anyway. But this journaling that I'm doing with you, that you've got me doing, is so transformational. And you're right, there are some days where I'm just like, I'm just gonna, you know, I don't feel like it today, and I might even do that, but then I'll come back to the next day and go a little bit deeper, and it is so valuable. So I'm just gonna plug that very briefly there. Go talk to Yinka about self-reflection journaling. Carry on, sorry.
No problem at all. So once I began to learn more about me, the truth of the statement, to know me is to love me, became so much fuller. And then that was when I began to understand that actually I can charge what I charge, and it isn't a reflection of me as in terms of intrinsic worth, because I now know what that intrinsic worth looks like and feels like. And I grew that comfort in that. And so then I began to explore, okay, so what is the nature of the transformation? You know, what difference do I make? What outcome do I bring? What opportunity comes my way? What do I give to my client, and how is their life better and different after I'm gone? And then on that basis, I then began to, I went through a period of thinking about, okay, so this is what I'm charging. I also thought about, okay, constantly worrying about your bills, stressed out to the nines, working all the hours that God sends is not only a disservice to me as an individual, but it's a disservice to my family. It's also a disservice to my clients. I need that free headspace to be able to do my best work. So what I then began to think about was, okay, how do I cover what I need to do in the hours that would be optimal for my clients? Because the thing that often, and again makes me laugh because we're socialized to do this, we often find it so difficult to do things for ourselves. And so I often, support my clients. And initially when I did it, I would frame it in terms of, okay, let's talk about service to others. Let's talk about you cutting yourself some slack or giving yourself less time to work in order for you to be better for your clients. And they were like, oh, okay, if it's for my clients, I can do that. I couldn't possibly do it for me, but I can do it for them. Cool, no problem. And so on that basis, I would then start thinking about, okay, I let's say it's 20 hours a week as opposed to 30. So then what would be the hourly rate? And the reason why I use this as a stage is because at some point, you're not, you want to be charging for who you are and what you offer, not the time on the clock. But the time on the clock conversation is a very useful stage that people often shun. And they'll be like, oh, you're trading time for money. That's ridiculous. It's a stage. Everyone is trading time for money because we all live in time. Yes, I have a mentor who charges $75,000 a day. And people bite his hand off to get that time with him. And I love that. I love it when I hear it. The first time I heard it, I was like, I thought I misheard it. And then I was like, okay, that triggers me. So I've got work to do, because ultimately he's giving them, 5 times, 10 times more than that in return. People are not stupid to be giving him money for no reason. Mm-hmm. And so I'm like, how do I create that level of value? Can I create that for one person? I do believe I will. But for now, I can create that, for multiple people. And so I can, charge £75,000 a day, out of, giving £1,000 worth of value to 75 people. There are always ways to get back out there. But value is what it comes back to. And the moment that you understand your own value, and then you begin to understand the value you offer and give, the pricing and the conversation completely adapts. And as I said, it is a process, and it's something, we're in looking and talking to clients who were charging through the floor. And, I'll never forget conversations where they're like, I'm like, how much are you charging? And they're like, oh, I'm charging X. And I'm like, don't do that. This is the last time I want to hear that number. And then they'll message me a few weeks later, I charge double, I charge triple, my spaces are full, nobody batted an eyelid, I've got better quality clients because they're paying more money. Those who pay money pay attention. I'm giving them more skin in the game. They're more committed. They show up ready. And so it's honestly what you believe to be true about charging more money if you're charging less is completely not true, and it's not accurate.
No, and one of the things that I have learned over the past few years is that, we don't get to decide what value other people get from our services and goods. And we also don't get to decide what people can afford to pay. That's up to them. And I think I certainly for me, I'm obviously not speaking for everybody else, but I know that one of my concerns in the past has been, what if people can't afford to pay? I want to help people. What if they can't afford to pay? And it's like, well, it's not my business. That's not my business. And I'm not ever going to encourage someone to go into debt to work with me. But if someone decides they want to and they want to pay me that money, then that's...
I mean, it always makes me laugh because, like I said, for the 55,000th time, I'm Nigerian. So, for example, what you believe people have and earn, like the poorest Nigerian person often dresses better than the richest British person. It cracks me up. And so you can't tell by looking, you don't have x-ray vision into people's bank accounts. I cannot tell you the number of times I've looked at someone or someone has jumped on a call with me and I've been like, okay, they're not gonna and I'll be doing the qualifying questions and they're like passing all the hurdles. I'm like, okay, I'll get to the end and they're like, yeah. I'm like, oh, do you need a payment plan? They're like, no. I'm like, okay, that's a turn up for the books. You don't know. You're like, I don't know if you look like you earn or have lots of money. You just don't know. It's a short answer in terms of what people can afford. But also you don't know people's stories.
No.
I absolutely have gone into debt to work with people and been so motivated to make that money back in a way that I wouldn't have been otherwise. Yeah. And so it's just, I really think it's important because of how much learned helplessness there is in this entire story, that you allow people the agency to choose.
Yes.
And they can choose, they can choose to continue that poverty cycle. And, I'm probably not the best person to talk to if you want to do that, but I respect your right to do that. I would never judge you. I would, I send you this information, with grace and with love. And if you want to take it, run with it. But if not, of course, you have every right to persist in poverty if that's your choice. Yeah. But the thing is, obviously, if you're running a business, you're not running a business to make it fail. And so even in there, you have stated your intention for wanting more. And so if you want more, then that journey to more isn't always going to feel good. And it's not always going to be in the realm of your comfort zone, especially around money. But it's so important that you do it, because if what you have to offer helps people and changes their lives and gives them something that's really meaningful and valuable, then it is your duty, your actual duty, if you care about them, to charge them properly, to give them skin in the game, to help them pay more attention by paying money, and to give them the opportunity to really thrive, knowing that they had, a hand in their own rescue. I cannot tell you the number of times I've given people stuff for free and they've sat next to people who paid, bucket loads for it. And the people who had it for free didn't even use it in the room, let alone out of it. And the people who paid went on to do really amazing things about it. So don't understand that it is a value exchange. It is not you're not taking from people, you are giving something in return. Your only part of the equation to worry about is making sure that it was worth the money that they gave you. Focus on your bit, mind your own business, literally.
I think that is the perfect note to end this podcast on. It all comes back to value. Yinka, that's been awesome as always. Talking to you is one of the highlights of my day. So thank you. And now we've got how many podcast episodes? Yeah, I was thinking maybe we should just start a podcast where Vicky and Yinka rant about stuff.
We should. That would be so cool.
That would be so cool. But no, seriously, I literally have run out of time now because Podfly get crossed. They don't. Podfly are amazing. Thank you, Podfly. They put time limits on me. But yeah, thank you so much. This has been, I really hope this helps people who are struggling with pricing and struggling with this idea of value and worth. And so I did say that was a perfect note to end on, but if people could just do one thing to get started, what would you suggest that they do?
I would suggest, if they've already dealt with the self-worth stuff, and if they haven't, and if they don't know how to, please contact me. I will be happy to share that, is to think about how much work do you need to do to kind of cover your life and stuff, and how much per hour does that need to equate to? As I said, I don't advocate the time for money swap, but it's a conversation that is a really useful stepping stone to what happens next. So if what you're charging right now per hour is never going to get you the lifestyle that you want or need, then that is a conversation that quickly needs to be addressed.
Lovely. Thank you so much. Where can we find out more about you?
LinkedIn is the best place to come find me active on a daily basis. Obviously, my daily emails too, hello@coloursuccess.com. Coloursuccess.com website is due in the very near future. So come find me also on Facebook, Twitter or Insta.
Lovely. I'm going to make sure all of those links are in the show notes so people can go and find you. And lastly, because this is going to date the podcast as well, but that's fine. Because you have something happening on April the 20th. So just very quickly, tell us where we can find out more about your next masterclass.
Yes, I think Wednesday, the 21st of April, the next masterclass is the art and science of bouncing back. So it's focused on the fact that life doesn't always go our way. And actually, that's no bad thing because, every setback can be a set up for a comeback. And so it's really focusing on, the key areas that I'll be looking at is kind of sales objections, rejections in business, and kind of giant shocks that kind of knock you off your feet. How to deal with the going down, how to deal with the coming back up, and how to make sure that some of the worst days are some of actually the best things that have ever happened to you.
Well, that sounds awesome. Obviously, I'm going to be there because I'm at all of them. But yeah, check out the links below. Yinka is on LinkedIn. You can find her on LinkedIn. You can also, I was going to call it LinkedIn then because it's your platform.
Excuse me, rebrand.
You can also get on her email list, hello@coloursuccess.com. Or, just contact me and I will put you in touch with her if you forget any of these things. But all of the links are below in the show notes. Yinka, thank you so much. This has been a delight. And I can't wait for next time.
Totally. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for tuning in, as always. I hope you enjoyed that interview with Yinka. I had an absolute blast, as you probably will have gathered. We did quite a lot of giggling, and we've now got so many plans for more episodes, so stay tuned for those. But in the meantime, you can find out more about Yinka at her in her email inbox. You can email her hello@coloursuccess.com. You can find her on LinkedIn, and the link is below. And yeah, just seek her out, find her, connect with her, ask her about what she does. And if you are lucky enough to work with her, then absolutely do so. And one of the best ways to do that is dip your toes in the water first and attend her masterclass, which is happening on Wednesday. So I'm going to just leave that there and say, as usual, thank you for listening. Thank you, Podfly, for doing your amazing work. Thank you, Harriet, for all of the work that you do for me. Thank you, Joe, for being an absent co-host this week. Joe's back next week. And yeah, if you enjoyed this, please consider leaving a 5-star review, or however many stars you think it deserves, and share it with people. Subscribe. Send it to people you think might enjoy it. And I will be back same time next week. Bye.
Thanks for listening. You can find links and show notes on the website at moxiebooks.co.uk/podcast, where you can also sign up for the best daily emails in the multiverse and find loads of free resources to help you write your book. We'll be back the same time next week with more tales from the book writing trenches and the latest on what the tiny sheeps have been up to.